Hey guys, welcome to another Friday webinar from the shed. Now, I'm pretty sure it was Andy Grove, Intel's co-founder, who originally coined the phrase strategic inflection point. And he was talking about an event that changes the way that we think and that we act. And that's certainly true of what's going on now. So while these are indeed challenging times, it's also a time of opportunity. And from an SEO perspective, there is a huge opportunity now for those businesses that can retain value and even improve potential value during this pandemic. And I'm delighted to say that's what we're going to be talking about today, and even more delighted to be joined by none other than Jon Brasington, our head of search. Jon, do you want to just give us a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. So yeah, as John said, I'm the head of search at Pi. I've been here for nearly 4 years, I guess. And my background's in sort of technical SEO, and yeah, really great to be doing this.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so just want to say at the beginning, in the last week's webinar, I actually forgot to say this, so it was too late, but definitely join us on Slack at the end for a Q&A. We've only got 30 minutes. John and I have got a load to pack into today's webinar, but we will be online in the Slack channel after that, and there's a link to that in the chat now. Okay, so to begin with, let's take a look at some of the different approaches that different companies are taking with their websites right now. So we're just going to run through a few of these, and then we're going to get into what's the right approach, what's the wrong approach, and then we've got a whole bunch of suggestions on things that you could be doing now to really add that value. So here's one that I really like. This is B&Q. Now, B&Q have actually gone for a partial closure of their shopping cart. You're still allowed in, you can still browse, you can still read all of that wonderful information. They can still be found in search, but you know what? They're only letting you purchase essential items. So I thought I'd test it. So I went in to imagine that my boiler's exploded and I need some new parts for it, or it's leaking. So I managed to add the parts that I needed into my basket, and then I thought, well, why don't I retile my bathroom, while I'm working from home? Not that I would ever do that. So I went to bathrooms and tried to add tiles, and I couldn't. So they've actually done a great job. And there's a game that you can play with this, John, which is basically guessing what's essential and what's non-essential. So great fun for you to have. National Trust. Okay, so this is non-retail. We know that you can't go into those open spaces at the moment. But what I love about what the National Trust has done, not only have they got the notice, they've actually got more information, but they link out to the government's relevant website pages as well to give you some more information about the do's, the don'ts, and the whys and what have you. So they've actually done a great job there. Next, okay, what can I say? Well, I tell you what Andy McGarry would say, who I was talking to last week, is he always says, next, always do it right. They always get it right when it comes to SEO. Here they've got a nice little notice at the top. Yeah, sorry, we're temporarily closed, but you can still come in, you can still browse, you can have a look around, and you can still bookmark. So that's another approach. John, tell us about Net-a-Porter.
Yeah, so Net-a-Porter have gone for the basically turning everything off approach. So they put a server response and they've put this splash page explaining what's going on. So it's great that they're explaining what's going on, and they're linking out to their Hong Kong site, but yeah, that's nothing else you can do, which is not an ideal SEO situation. We'll come on to that a bit later.
Okay, so here's another one I saw, and this is quite an unusual one. This is from soulsmates.com, who actually sells some pretty nice gear. I think they're a US site. What are they returning? A 402 response code. John, what the heck's that?
We've discussed this. It's a reserved for future use code. So who knows? It used to be about payment problems. You couldn't go. It was like a 404 because you hadn't spent the money. Bit of an odd one. Haven't seen that before myself.
I've never seen it, and that's why I was asking you as the technical expert. So we're just going to do a quick poll now. So basically, to see whether anyone's ever heard of this. Are you familiar with it? You've used it? No, you haven't. So if you guys just want to click in there, and then we will confirm. I think most people are responding now. Oh, okay. 6% have said yes, and they've used it before. Who are those 6%? Let us know in the notes why you've used it, or maybe in Slack afterwards. 16% heard of it and never used it. 80%, 5%. 5% have used it before. 80%, no, never heard of it. Okay, so same as you and me, John.
Yeah.
Right, moving on. I've lost my mouse. Here we go. Okay, so here's another approach. This is Marks and Spencer's. You know what I love about this? They've actually moved that top messaging down about home comforts, etc. Probably one of the most valuable bits of real estate on their whole site. They've moved that down. They've put this clear messaging at the top. They are open. The food hall is open for business as usual. Okay, I really like that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and then what about this one? TK Maxx. TK Maxx. Now this was about a week to 10 days ago. Shut up shop. You can't look around. You can't go anywhere. And when they did this, John, I did a site operator to see how many pages were being returned. Okay, and overnight, 400 pages appeared to be de-indexed. So a couple of days later, I went back in, and it wasn't 400. It was only 100. So something's happened to improve this situation. So I looked at the website. What have they done? Two things. They've allowed you in to browse. They've opened up the nav. They've let Google back in, and they've added a really nice statement there, a statement, because you know what they've done? They've got inside the mind of the searcher. They understand people have questions and concerns and queries, you know, differences of intent, and they've put a reassuring message with a link as well. So that's a super nice touch. Okay, so into the what you do or what not to do and why. But before we do that, we got a quick poll. What is your business doing with their website during COVID-19? Love to hear your thoughts on that for a second. Should be interesting, John.
Yeah, I think it's so many. It's great to go through all of these different options. There's so many different ways that people have had to approach this. Be it the sort of necessity of speed, all of these things.
Yeah.
When I talk about in a minute, we'll talk about the kind of the oddities of different reactions and how Google's responding to them differently as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing about that. Okay, the poll is closed. The results are in. 90%, and this is great, 90% of websites are still running as usual. Okay, 5% are partially open for essentials, and 5% temporarily closed but still browsable. Okay, so I think some great responses there. So, John, I'm going to pass over to you here. Can you tell us what this chart is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is just one of the search terms we pulled out for Net-a-Porter Fendi sports bras, but it demonstrates what can happen if you're using something like a 500 code or turning off your site off, essentially making that big drastic change to Google. So as you see on this chart, they sort of ranking position 1, a little bit of drops down to position 2. That's the blue line, and that was the UK site, the GB site. Now, when they switch to the holding page, this 503 server unavailable, you can see immediately there's just that blue line falls off, and now that was really quick, which we expect to see. You kind of expect to see that after a couple of days, maybe even a week. You see those kind of losses of rankings, but the problem for Net-a-Porter is that they have they're an international presence, and that their Canadian site and their US site, both in English, are both still up and running. So what happened for Google is it has all of these in its index. It has the Canadian site, it has the US site in its index. And when it was sent this message saying, the UK is not available, it had an even faster drop-off reaction because it had a bit of appropriate content, but not as nearly as good, right? Because it's the Canadian and then the US site. So as a result, you see an immediate loss of rankings.
That's really interesting. So in your experience, the loss here from shutting down a website is much faster due to the fact they've got international versions appearing in the UK SERP.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this sort of number has changed over the years. I think back before, we used to say if you had a 500 code for even a day, you were going to expect some sort of permanent losses. It's been a little bit slower in this period, and I think that's to do with some of the evolutions in Google search, making Google crawlers a little bit less responsive, maybe a little bit more friendly to a 500 code or a 302 code. But still everyone's going to be starting to see that impact. We saw with TK Maxx, as you said, things returned to normal in that acceptable time frame.
You're right, John, and we didn't see the losses that we would have expected with that 503, even after 5 days. So interesting. And what do we got here? The Hong Kong site still open for business? What's that about?
Yeah, I mean they've thrown up an interstitial, which we can a conversation for another day. But at least they're doing kind of the right thing here. They're the minimal SEO change, minimal change to Google, and sort of vital information. And I expect to see that Hong Kong site appearing in their English search too soon.
So the message here, I think, John, don't disable the whole website unless you really have to.
Yeah, I mean, and sort of what are those situations where you really have to?
Yeah.
Probably quite few and far between. It's just continuity. Google, we'll talk about this. Google hasn't stopped because of coronavirus.
Yeah, very good point, which we'll come on to later. So sometimes, and we did see in the poll that some people have basically shut down their websites. So sometimes, John, at a time like this, it's down to the SEO team to actually try to convince the wider business that this is not a time to shut up online. Do you want to just take us through some of these points here, John?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll share this around, and I'll go through this fairly quickly, but I mentioned earlier, you will lose hard-earned organic positions, and that is not we'll switch it back on and they're going to go back to normal. We've seen this in the past with, in other contexts with site migrations, with server issues, so that you don't get to click your fingers and go back to where you started. Those positions are, the longer you're down, the less sort of you'll recover. You're also losing, I mean, that's just a pure SEO. You're losing this sort of valuable channel to channel. It's easy to think, oh, we can't operate, customers won't come in, but we're not. It's not a shop front. It's something that people will be coming to still, and you're losing that ability to talk through your site. So obviously, you might still have your social, but your site is still a vital place to share a lot more information. And we'll talk about sharing information later as well, because I think this is one of the really important things to do is share information about what's happening, where you're an expert in the field. Other things, your site is an entity in Google. It goes beyond its live, what customers do on it. It does things for the knowledge panel. It appears in many places, and you're sort of pulling out that Jenga brick in that, and you could risk all that hard work, all that effort that went into getting everything set up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, and this is going to be really vital post-coronavirus, is we're going to need that data. We're going to need to know what happened during this period. We'll talk about it as well, but there's probably going to be algorithm updates in this period, and we need, if you're turning off the site, you're going to lose any kind of valuable Google Search Console data, and its overall verification will drop off. So that's even more stuff to be doing when things get back. And on the flip side, rivals who can continue to operate in this process will carry on operating, will grab your customers. They'll see, we don't know this, but we'll see a larger share of dominant share of voice type sites, I imagine, after this. They'll get to do all the things that you can't do, like experimenting, working out how to get more SERP features in this period. They'll gain ground on everyone in the sort of the new modern challenges of SEA. And I think this is really kind of, it's not an SEO point, but it's it's vital for anyone really, is that there's the trust and loyalty that will be built by being around in this period if you can. That's something to build in this period, and people are looking for support in every way they can right now.
Absolutely, John, and you mentioned algorithm update. That's one of my biggest fears right now. As you said, I'll say later, Google doesn't know that there is a pandemic. It might know people are searching for it, but it doesn't know what's going on and how this is impacting us. So given last year's pattern of core updates, I'd be amazed if there wasn't one in the next 4 to 8 weeks. So for that reason alone, I am staying even more closely attuned to the SERP right now during this period of volatility.
Yeah, we might think of them as, oh, why would they do that? That's unfair. They cause so much kind of chaos and damage to us. Isn't that unfair? But to Google's perspective, it's a release. It's a product release. It's an upgrade.
It's an improvement.
Yeah.
They should be trying to improve the algorithm and the quality of the results. So having sort of looked at what you definitely shouldn't do, we're going to take a look at what you should do. And we've got about a dozen things that you can do right now during this period to actually add that value, to come out the other side stronger and to boost your visibility. So number one, got to say this, tell your customers what's going on. And Tesco here do it fantastically. Again, they've moved that content down and they're occupying that really valuable real estate on their website with clear messaging. Brilliant. Morrison's, okay, they've still got it on there, but it's not front and center. It's healthy breakfast tips front and center with the easy shop as well. I did see one website, online shopping, okay, food, okay, retailer, famous, not going to mention their name, who up until 2 days ago had no messaging on their homepage at all. They've put it right now. So tell your customers what's going on. Limit or disable cart functionality. I mentioned it before. B&Q, brilliant. Play the game. What's essential and what's not? You'll find out in B&Q. Boots here, okay. They've actually added some text, added some clarification to the appointment process for booking an eye test. Brilliant. So I'm not going to waste my time going all the way through this to find out I actually can't have an eye test. I'm finding out front and center. Nice messages, John. Yeah.
I think on that, it's really when you're in the cart, when you're in the purchase journey, and it comes to quite far down the line, and you get to delivery time. Really important to put some messaging right there to explain how this is impacted on delivery time. Because I almost didn't order something the other day, as I hadn't seen any reassurance that this would be, within their standard delivery time, and I thought maybe I won't buy this.
Yeah, really good point. Reassurance. Keep talking with your customers. Now, I was talking to Martha Van Berkel. Some of you guys might have heard of her. She is the founder and CEO of Schema App, and we were talking about what you can do, and she said, well, now is a great time to max out your visibility in search, and you know what, Schema is a great way to do that. And she's a huge advocate of Schema, and certainly I'm a huge advocate of the work that they're doing. And basically what's happened, Schema 7 has been fast-tracked to assist with the current situation, and there have been 3 changes to the vocabulary, which I'm going to illustrate here. So the first one, special announcement, that's actually pending, and that's to represent an information update, okay, by locally oriented companies, organizations such as schools, pharmacies, police stations, that kind of thing. Okay, the intent there is to bring clarity to practical information. So, okay, so there's no reason why you can't actually start using it now. Irrelevant. Number 2, COVID testing facility. Okay, so that can be used alongside other local business types. Now, and then there's number 3. Okay, sorry, I'm reading in a different order, but COVID testing, we found a number of places are offering COVID testing right now, but they haven't actually got the schema out. There's no reason why they can't do that. And events, okay? There are new properties for event schema markup. For example, has your event gone online from offline? Is it a mixture of the two, or has it been cancelled? So these are things that you can implement now that will have very, very immediate effect and impact on your presence in the SERPs. And again, it's another way of communicating with the customer and also with the search engines. Okay, move events online. This is what we had to do with the second SEO in the shed, and you know the result of that? We actually doubled the number of attendees, and we've got attendees, and I can see them today. We've got attendees from all around the world, from Asia, from the US. We would never have got these guys, you guys, in the room if we hadn't actually moved online. So not only do you have more people in the room, but you get increased audience engagement. And that one there, giving the quieter ones a voice. Now, John, you know I used to be a lecturer, very passionate about that in my former life, before I donned my SEO hat. And I remember when we first started experimenting with asynchronous communication, chat rooms, okay. So we started to build chat rooms where students could dial in and communicate. And one thing that I noticed was that this student actually started talking for the first time. You know, one of the girls in my class, I probably didn't even know her name, but I thought, wow, you know, she's communicating, you know, this is amazing stuff. You know, she made a valuable contribution, but she would have never have done that, you know, in that lecture situation, because she was probably worried about getting shouted down or getting ignored or being wrong. But sometimes different forms of communication make things easier for people. So yeah, that really touched me. You know, you get great event analytics, and the audience can watch anytime. So if you're not watching this live, you'll be able to go and watch this later on YouTube. You can watch it, you know, tomorrow on the weekend, or you know, when you have a moment. So, you know, any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I just think that's a really nice comment, especially the one about the voice. You know, I think we've been talking about silver linings in this period, and it's nice to be able to have that kind of equality, you know, we can all actually experience in this time. It's positive.
Yeah,
it's nice.
it is. And I tell you what, you know, we've got offices all over the place, and in the past 2 weeks, I have never had so much communication with different people in different teams. Yeah, it's kind of liberating. So I can't wait to get out of this and go and give everyone a hug, because I haven't been communicating with them as much as I should have been before this situation. Okay, John, if I start on this, I'm going to talk forever. Okay? So you tell us why it's still critical to monitor performance of content and competitors.
Yeah, I've tried to get this down to as short as possible, but if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, I can just, yeah, well, there's a lot. So I think the most important one is when this ends, when we come out of this and you know, things have to go back to normal, and there's going to be sadly quite a lot of pressure on everyone to rebuild and repair and get things running, and people won't expect trading, and you know, things will have a lot of pressure. And the truth is that if we don't have this data over this period, and we're not monitoring, and we're not aware of what happens over however long it is, that's not going to be as simple as just turning the lights back on. So keeping a constant eye on what happens, you know, we mentioned algorithm updates, we mentioned the fact that some competitors are going to be probably more active than others. The whole challenge of what actually Google does in this period will open up questions, and so being able to keep a sense of what's happening throughout this period is vital. And then you'll know exactly what you have to do as you come back, because those targets are going to be different, and it's going to be harder probably. And it will be if you say you're 10% share of voice now and you come out at 5%, people are going to not understand that you have a much harder challenge to deal with now. But silver linings, of course, this is a time to do things that you could never do before. And if you're doing a migration, you had a migration plan, then absolutely get that through. But you know, we were talking on the Slack chat the other day about being able to run experiments in SEO and how difficult that is to run those SEO experiments. But finally, you know, we actually have a bit of freedom. If traffic is gone, you know, those rankings haven't gone. As we say, Google is still the same. So you can use this opportunity to do risk-free experiments. You could no index pages, which cause you constant conflict, but you've always been too nervous to turn them off.
Yeah.
You could tech releases, anything like that. As long as you've got the resources still, this is a chance to set yourself up ready for the rest of the year's challenges. And yeah, and communicate with us as well. Obviously, we're all here. We're all here to talk. So we can share ideas and really try and sort of get through this together.
Couldn't have said it better myself, John. Indeed. And here's another one. And we spoke about this the other day, and I thought, you know, why not build a wish list if you haven't got one? And I use Amazon as the example. They've always had one. My wish list in Amazon is bulging. Okay. But you know, why not? If people can't buy during this period of time, let them add things to a wish list. So when we come out of the other side, you know, all that stuff that I might have forgotten about is actually still there. I don't have to scratch around for it. So just a thought there. Next one. Okay, this one is super critical. This one is about giving your customers answers. Okay, giving them answers, because you know, keywords might be the same. There may have been some change, but there's a lot more questions now. So we're looking at 2 radar charts here. You know, each one is analyzing the SERP for a bunch of search terms, say about 200 search terms over a 3-week period, pre-pandemic and during or post-pandemic. Now, the one thing that you'll note, two things you'll notice from here. First of all, there are less images now. Okay, there's a hell of a lot less text ads and PLAs, but PAA, or people also ask, has increased 100%. 100%. That's a lot more questions. Okay, and answer cards have yet to catch up. So there's a lot more questions that aren't being answered. What we need to do is go into the SERP, find those questions, and create content that answers those. Okay, because that's what people want. And the answers, again, as I spoke about last week, are all in the SERP. Okay. So some other things to think about. John, do you want to just take us, and again, we've got 5 minutes left, do you want to take us through what some of these points?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the hardest things that we've been dealing with right now is keyword research, and that's the speed of data. Google Google takes a month, around January 10th to 13th, to publish search volume data. And obviously we've got new challenges like never before. I mean, something we've been doing at Pi is helping everybody work out what those keywords are, because we do have some tools to use to get insight into intent, insight into people's challenges. And there's Google Trends, of course, doesn't give you real numbers, but it does give you an indication. And it requires a lot of creativity, actually. It requires sitting down and getting your mind into the searcher, as you always say, John. But working out what are the kind of things that people who work with you might be interested in, your customers might want from you. But also look at your Google Search Console, look at your internal search queries, and look at the support questions, and build out information to start working on keyword research. You can start optimizing for that stuff without the absolute search volumes. And this is what we do in a brand product launch anyway. You know, we often have to go into this world without search volume, and this is the same thing there. Vitally in that research phase, you know, work out what the relationship with your brand is, and this outbreak. People want to know what you're doing. People care, depending on which industry you're in, sector, how well known you are. There is vital that you communicate and understand what people are asking for. You know, we work with a client who works in property, and they're wanting to find out what kind of support people are looking for with like rent freezes and things like that. And they asked us to help understand that kind of language, which then they can address properly. As John has mentioned, analyzing the SERPs, intent on your competitors, this is vital. Don't pre-COVID, we might have seen this sort of thing, shopping ads, lots of things like that. We've now added a lot of PAAs and things like that. So make sure you're refreshing, looking at those vital keywords, and getting there. So I'm just going to quickly go through this with time, but yeah, make sure you target those terms. As John said, if you can do something online, absolutely try and get it online, and get those fixes through.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you. Right, moving on from there. Okay, John, you and I had a brainstorm on this the other day. I'll summarize this in about 15 seconds. Regardless of your sector of industry, things have changed. Questions, queries, intent. Okay, transactional might have moved to informational research, and vice versa. Okay, we need to think, is there content we can create that will benefit? And benefit is key to satisfying Google as well. Okay, so we need to follow those guidelines. The answers are in the SERP landscape, exactly as we discussed last week. John, here's an example of somebody who's actually done a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is them taking their position as about travel, this travel supermarket, and giving people valuable information that they have, they have a right to, and an expertise. That's the EAT all over.
Exactly. Okay, wonderful. So again, sorry to rush. We're kind of running close on time here. Can we use this time to improve our website? And again, you've talked about this, John. Now is the time to do that, to actually improve those opportunity terms that are sitting on page 2 and 3. Why not? We all know what they are. We all know the content that's suffering from conflict, internal conflict right now. What if there's a core update? We need to bear that in mind as well. Can we come out the other side of this in a stronger position, okay, by building more value into our website now? So just really to summarize, stay close to your customers, tell Google about your updates, use this time, as John says, get stuff fixed. Monitor search engine activity and volatility. Don't turn your back on Google, because we all know what can happen when you do that. Monitor and maintain your organic performance throughout all of this. So as we draw to a close, John, I just want to say thank you so much for spending the 30 minutes with us today, and I hope to get you back on a future episode. There's so much more to learn here. And to the audience, people tuning in from all over the world, thank you again so much for joining in and listening in, and look forward to seeing you next week. Okay, as I said before, you can join us on Slack right now. John and myself are going to be on there for the next 30 minutes or so answering questions. So that brings us to the end of this, and I hope now that there is room for optimism here, really to implement those changes, do the things we've been sitting upon, do that research and build value into our website. Thank you very much, guys. See you next week.